He was humiliated and thrown away like trash by his girlfriend's billionaire father, just for being poor. But what that arrogant man didn't know was that he was insulting his greatest secret rival, a disguised genius who wasn't just coming back for revenge. He was coming back to take everything. This isn't just a love story, it's a story about how brutally society can judge a book by its cover. Have you ever felt the bitter sting of injustice? That feeling that no matter how good you are, the world only sees the size of your wallet. That's exactly where our story begins. We meet Alan Weaver, a man with a huge heart but a modest bank account, and Janet Hicks, the woman who loves him for who he is. But their love is about to be tested by the fire of contempt and cruelty. Get ready for a breathtaking journey, filled with humiliation. A family drama that will leave you shattered, and a payback plan so brilliant, it's almost unbelievable. The stakes couldn't be higher. A multi-billion-dollar empire is on the line. A secret identity could destroy everything. And a shocking plot twist will be a life-changing moment for everyone involved. The question is revenge worth it if it costs you your one true love? This is a story that will make you question everything. So get ready. If you believe that karma always finds its way, comment justice right now. Like this video as a sign that true worth is priceless. Share it with someone who needs to see good win. And subscribe so you don't miss a single second of this triumphant story. Let's begin. The clinking of crystal glasses and the low hum of polite conversation filled the opulent dining room, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside Alan Weaver. He sat beside Janet, her hand a comforting weight on his, but even that couldn't shield him from the icy glare of her father, Mr. Harrison, a man who radiated power. This wasn't just a dinner, it was an interrogation disguised with fine china. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a steak knife. A classic rich versus poor confrontation about to ignite. Mr. Harrison finally broke the silence, his voice dripping with condescension. "So Alan," he began, swirling the wine in his glass, "Janet tells me you're a clerk of some sort." He made the word sound like an insult, a disease. The entire family drama was playing out for all to see, and Alan felt the eyes of everyone at the table on him. He was being weighed and measured, not as a person, but as a financial statement, and he was coming up short in this billionaire's world. The humiliation was a physical blow, sharp and sudden. "I work in logistics, sir," Alan replied, his voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. He refused to be broken. But Mr. Harrison just chuckled, a cold, empty sound. Logistics. How quaint. "Tell me, how does a man with no ambition, no legacy, no real future, possibly believe he is worthy of my daughter?" The words were a calculated strike, designed to inflict maximum emotional damage. Alan felt a profound sense of isolation, as if a glass wall had descended between him and everyone else at the table. He was an exhibit in a zoo, the strange creature from a lower class put on display for the amusement of the wealthy. Every ornate decoration in the room seemed to mock his simple existence. This was the raw, emotional core of being underestimated, a feeling he knew would become the fuel for a future he couldn't yet imagine, a future built on payback. Janet squeezed his hand tighter, her own anger flaring. "Dad, stop it," she whispered fiercely, but her father was relentless. He saw this as a necessary cruelty, a way to expose the truth of their mismatched love story. For him, this wasn't about love, it was a business transaction, and Alan Weaver was a bad investment. The shocking disregard for his daughter's feelings was a testament to his cold-hearted nature, setting the stage for a dramatic payback. "He's worthless, Janet. A nobody clinging to you for a lifestyle he could never afford," Harrison declared, his voice rising. The final nail was hammered in. Alan felt a strange calm settle over him, the kind that comes before a hurricane. He was underestimated, dismissed entirely. This moment, this raw and brutal humiliation, was not an ending. Oh no. It was the beginning of a life-changing quest for revenge that no one saw coming. He looked across the table, meeting the billionaire's smug gaze, and a silent promise was made. A fire was lit that night, a need for payback so intense it was almost terrifying. The emotional weight of this encounter would fuel a plan of unimaginable scale. What word best describes the father's attitude in this moment? Drop it in the comments. This family drama was just getting started, and a secret rival was silently taking notes. But it wasn't always like this. Before the magnificent prison of her family's mansion, their world was simple, and it was beautiful. We see them not under the glare of chandeliers, but under the soft glow of a street lamp, sharing a single umbrella in the pouring rain. Their laughter was the only sound that mattered, a melody of pure, uncomplicated true love. This was their love story before the drama and the judgment of a billionaire father intervened, a time of pure connection. Alan Weaver wasn't a nobody, he was her everything. He was the man who'd stay up all night with her when she was sick, making terrible soup and even worse jokes just to see her smile. He worked a grueling job, not for glory or riches, but to build a small, stable life for them. His hands, though calloused from work, were always gentle with her. He was the definition of a good man, underestimated by a world that only valued net worth. One of their most cherished memories was a Tuesday night, armed with a cheap telescope on a hill overlooking the city. He didn't just point out constellations, he invented stories for them, weaving tales of heroic stars and cosmic drama. Janet felt more wonder in that moment than on any of her father's five-star European holidays. It was in these small, priceless moments that the foundation of their triumphant love story was truly built, far from the world of money. Their dates weren't extravagant trips to Paris, they were picnics in the park with sandwiches, wrapped in wax paper, and a shared bottle of cheap wine. They'd talk for hours about everything and nothing, their dreams intertwined. Janet Hicks found more richness in those simple moments with Alan than in all her father's sprawling estates. She knew his secret identity, not an undercover CEO, but a king in a world where kindness was the only currency. He was the one who encouraged her passions, who listened to her fears, who saw the woman behind the heiress. With Alan, she wasn't just a billionaire's daughter, she was simply Janet. He never asked for anything, yet he gave her everything that mattered. This was the foundation of their bond, a connection so deep and real that the thought of it being torn apart by family drama felt like a soul-crushing tragedy waiting to happen. This stark contrast between their private world and her family's expectations was the cruelest joke of all. The man her father saw as worthless was the same man who made his daughter feel priceless. It was a classic tale of rich versus poor, but with a heart-wrenching twist. The richest man in their story was the one with nothing but love to give. This emotional truth would soon become a weapon in a battle no one anticipated. Their simple happiness was a silent rebellion against her father's world of cold, hard cash. It was a life built on mutual respect and genuine affection, a sanctuary that was about to be invaded. The memories of these stolen, perfect moments would become Janet's anchor in the storm to come, a reminder of the true love she was fighting for, a love that was now threatened by a force that aimed to destroy it completely. Mr. Harrison's world was one of towering skyscrapers that pierced the clouds, each one bearing his name in bold, gold letters. He was a titan of industry, a ruthless billionaire who didn't just participate in the market, he controlled it. His days were a whirlwind of high-stakes meetings and cold-blooded decisions that could make or break entire companies. He moved through life with the certainty of a man who had never been told no, a force of nature in a custom-tailored suit. He saw people not as souls, but as assets or liabilities. In his mind, a man's worth was a number, easily calculated from his portfolio and possessions. Love, honor, integrity? These were frivolous concepts, sentimental nonsense for the weak. This philosophy was the bedrock of his empire and the source of his venomous disdain for Alan Weaver. To him, Alan wasn't just unsuitable, he was an anomaly, a glitch in a system where wealth equals value. This worldview extended to everything. He saw a beautiful sunset not as a moment of wonder, but as prime real estate with an ocean view. A piece of art was not a source of emotional connection, but an asset that appreciated in value. This inability to see the world through any lens other than profit and loss made him incapable of understanding his own daughter's heart. It was a self-imposed blindness, a spiritual poverty that no amount of money could ever cure. We see him on a series of phone calls, barking orders that send ripples across the globe, destroying a business rival with a single casual command. His power was absolute, his influence terrifying. This wasn't just a rich man, this was a king in a kingdom of his own making, and he guarded his dynasty with a fierce, paternalistic cruelty. He genuinely believed that protecting Janet from a man like Alan was his sacred duty, a holy war against poverty and mediocrity. His contempt was not a secret. He openly mocked Alan's job, his clothes, his simple aspirations. This constant dripping poison was a calculated strategy in their ongoing family drama. He wanted to erode Janet's affection for Alan, to make her see him through his eyes as a parasite, a social climber aiming for a life he hadn't earned. The emotional toll on the young couple was immense, but it only solidified the tycoon's resolve to end their love story. This deep-seated belief system made him the perfect antagonist in their lives. He wasn't just a disapproving father, he was a walking, talking embodiment of a world where the poor are inherently less. He couldn't comprehend that Janet's love for Alan was genuine, a true love that transcended financial status. In his view, it had to be a delusion, a youthful mistake that he, with his infinite wisdom and wealth, was obligated to correct through any means necessary. And so he began to plot. This wasn't a man who waited for things to resolve themselves. He was a predator, and he had his sights set on the perceived weakness in his daughter's life. The wheels were turning for a truly life-changing confrontation, a test designed not to reveal Alan's character, but to prove his own cynical, materialistic worldview right. A shocking plan was beginning to form, one that would leverage all his power. The confrontation happened in the sterile, intimidating silence of Mr. Harrison's penthouse office, a room that seemed to look down on the entire world. The air was thick with the smell of old leather and older money. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. With a flick of his wrist, he produced a checkbook from a polished mahogany desk. This was his arena, his battlefield, and he was about to deploy his favorite weapon, an obscene amount of cash. "I'm a busy man, Weaver, so let's cut the drama," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He scrawled a figure onto the check with a heavy fountain pen, the scratching sound echoing in the silent room. $1 million. It's more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime. Take it, and you walk away from my daughter. You disappear, and you never contact her again. It was a cold, brutal transaction, the ultimate test of character in this rich versus poor saga. He slid the check across the vast desk, the small piece of paper representing an impossible, life-changing sum. It sat there, a silent temptation. For a man of Alan's modest means, that money could solve every problem he'd ever had. It could provide security, freedom, a new beginning. Mr. Harrison watched him, a smug, knowing look on his face. He was certain he knew how this would end. He believed every man had a price, and he had just named Alan's. This wasn't just a bribe, it was a philosophical statement. It was the billionaire's way of proving his point that love, loyalty, and everything Alan claimed to stand for were just commodities, waiting to be bought and sold. He wanted to not only remove Alan from Janet's life, but also to shatter her idealized image of him. He wanted her to see him as just another person who could be purchased, confirming his belief that their love story was a sham. Alan stared at the check, but he didn't see the numbers. He saw a world devoid of warmth, a universe where every human connection was just a negotiation. He saw the sad, empty soul of the man offering it, a man so rich yet so bankrupt in the things that truly mattered. In that moment, he felt not temptation, but a profound pity for the billionaire. This wasn't a life-changing opportunity, it was a glimpse into a very pretty, very lonely hell. The emotional pressure in the room was immense, a silent battle of wills being fought over a slip of paper. What would you do in his shoes? Be honest in the comments. For a long moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. This was the turning point, the moment where everything could change. The tycoon leaned back in his chair, confident in his victory. He had presented the ultimate choice, a clear line drawn in the sand. But he had severely underestimated the man standing before him, a man whose integrity was not for sale, setting the stage for a shocking act of defiance that would change the game forever. He saw a poor man he could buy, but he was actually looking at a secret rival who was about to make a move that money could never predict, a move that would lead to an explosive payback. Alan Weaver let out a slow, deliberate breath. He picked up the check, feeling its crispness between his fingers. It was a tangible representation of everything he was not and everything Mr. Harrison was. He held the billionaire's gaze for a heartbeat, a silent challenge passing between them. Then, with a calm, steady motion, he tore the check in half, and then in half again. The sound of ripping paper was like a gunshot in the silent, opulent office. The pieces fluttered down onto the polished desk like confetti at a funeral. "You don't get it, do you?" Alan said, his voice quiet, but resonating with unshakable power. "Her love isn't something you can put a price tag on. It's not for sale." This was his declaration of war. It was a triumphant moment for the underestimated, a man choosing true love over a fortune. The look of utter shock on the billionaire's face was a victory in itself. For a split second, Mr. Harrison felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades, utter bewilderment. His weapon, the one that had bent the world to his will his entire life, had just been rendered useless. The shock quickly curdled into something far more potent, a cold, reptilian fury. This wasn't just an insult, it was a fundamental violation of the natural order of his universe. The gears of a far more destructive revenge began to turn in his mind. Unbeknownst to them both, Janet Hicks was standing just outside the office door, having followed Alan with a sense of dread. She heard every word. Through the crack in the door, she saw him tear up the life-changing sum of money. Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of profound, overwhelming love and relief. At that moment, her loyalty was sealed forever. Alan wasn't just her boyfriend, he was her hero, proving their love story was real. But as Janet's love was cemented, her father's fury ignited into a raging inferno. This wasn't just defiance, it was the ultimate insult. Alan hadn't just rejected his money, he had rejected his entire worldview. The act of tearing up that check was a slap in the face, a challenge to his power that he could not, and would not, tolerate. The family drama had just escalated into a full-blown war, with an enraged tycoon now plotting his revenge. Mr. Harrison's face contorted into a mask of pure rage. The polite facade of the ruthless businessman was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. He saw Alan's act not as one of integrity, but as an arrogant display of disrespect. "You will regret this," he seethed, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I will not just defeat you, I will erase you." The threat was chillingly real. This single act of defiance was a shocking plot twist for the tycoon, who had never encountered something his money couldn't solve. Alan walked out of that office with his head held high, leaving a furious billionaire in his wake. He had won the moral victory, but in doing so, he had unleashed a powerful enemy. The path of payback was now a two-way street, and the consequences of this day were about to become brutally, painfully clear. Topic 6. The father retaliates by using his influence to get Alan fired from his job and blacklisted, attempting to financially cripple him. The fallout was swift and merciless. Mr. Harrison, a man who wielded influence like a weapon, made a single phone call. The next morning, when Alan Weaver arrived at work, his access card was denied. He was called into his manager's office, a place where he was once praised for his hard work, and was unceremoniously fired. The reason given was corporate restructuring, a vague and hollow excuse that fooled no one, least of all Alan. But getting him fired was only the beginning. The billionaire's revenge was far more insidious. He systematically blacklisted Alan, ensuring that every door he knocked on was slammed shut in his face. His resume, once solid, was now toxic. Every interview he landed would end abruptly with a polite but firm rejection. He was trapped in a professional nightmare, an invisible wall erected around him by a man with limitless power. This was karma of the coolest kind. The financial pressure began to mount. Savings dwindled. Bills piled up. The weight of his predicament was crushing, a deliberate and calculated campaign to break his spirit. This was the tycoon's true power on display, the ability to not just defeat a man, but to suffocate him, to cut off his air supply until he had no choice but to surrender. It was a cruel, emotional chess game, and Alan was being pushed into an impossible corner in this rich versus poor battle. A creeping paranoia started to set in. Alan felt like he was being watched, followed, that every move he made was being monitored by the billionaire's vast network. The city that was once his home now felt like a cage, with Mr. Harrison as the unseen zookeeper. This psychological warfare was perhaps the most brutal part of the payback, designed to make him feel small, powerless, and utterly alone, breaking him down from the inside out. This was the life-changing reality of defying a powerful man. The world that had once seemed full of opportunity was now a barren wasteland. The humiliation of that dinner was nothing compared to the slow, grinding humiliation of being deemed unemployable. Each rejection was another twist of the knife, a reminder of the enemy he had made. The father's payback was designed to be slow, painful, and absolute, leaving Alan with nothing. Yet, through it all, a quiet resolve hardened within Alan. This attack, meant to cripple him, was instead forging him into something stronger. He was underestimated, but he was not broken. As he faced this onslaught, the seeds of his own complex revenge plot began to take root. He realized he couldn't fight this billionaire on his terms. He had to play a different game entirely, one that involved a secret identity no one could ever suspect. The tycoon thought he was crushing a nobody, a minor annoyance in his grand world. He had no idea he was creating his own worst enemy. While Alan appeared to be sinking, he was secretly learning, adapting, and planning. He was an undercover CEO in waiting, orchestrating a payback of such epic proportions, it would redefine their entire power dynamic. The father's attempt to ruin him was, ironically, the very thing that would fuel his triumphant rise from the ashes. While her father was busy trying to dismantle Alan's life, Janet Hicks became his silent guardian angel, a fierce warrior in their private love story. She confronted her father, her voice shaking with a rage he had never seen in her before. She accused him of being a tyrant, a bully who was so blinded by his wealth that he couldn't recognize a truly good man. Their arguments became the thunderous soundtrack of the family drama, echoing through the empty halls of the mansion. Knowing Alan would be too proud to accept help directly, she found clever ways to support him. She would lose her wallet filled with cash in his apartment, or accidentally overpay him for small errands she invented. It was a delicate dance, a way to preserve his dignity while ensuring he survived the financial onslaught. Each secret act of defiance was a testament to her unwavering loyalty, proving her commitment was to Alan Weaver, the man, not his financial statement. One evening, her father nearly caught her transferring a large sum of money to a blind account she had set up for Alan. He walked into the study unannounced. and she had to hide the transaction in a split second, her heart pounding in her chest. The close call was a terrifying reminder of the risks she was taking. But instead of scaring her off, it solidified her resolve. This was a dangerous game, and she was all in, proving her true love was fearless. This rebellion was a life-changing turning point for Janet. She was no longer just a billionaire's dutiful daughter. She was a woman fighting for her true love, actively working against the powerful man who raised her. She was risking her inheritance, her comfortable life, and her relationship with her father, all for the man who had been so cruelly underestimated. Her actions screamed a single undeniable truth: her love could not be bought or intimidated into submission. She became his source of strength, his emotional rock. When the rejections piled up and the world seemed to be conspiring against him, Janet was there to remind him of his worth. She would hold him and tell him that this was just a test, a storm they would weather together. Her faith in him was the one thing her father's money couldn't destroy. It was the foundation upon which Alan would build his secret empire and plan his ultimate payback. Their bond, forged in the simplicity of their earlier days, was now being tempered in the fires of adversity. It grew stronger, more resilient. Janet's defiance was not just about saving Alan, it was about saving herself from a future dictated by her father's cold, materialistic values. She was choosing a life of meaning over a life of wealth, a decision that enraged her father and solidified her place in Alan's heart as his ultimate partner in this fight. But even as she fought for him, Janet had no idea of the true scale of the game being played. She saw Alan as a victim, a good man being crushed by a ruthless system. She couldn't possibly imagine that the man she was secretly helping was not a victim at all, but a secret rival, an undercover CEO on the verge of launching the biggest corporate revenge in history. The real plot twist was still waiting in the wings. While Alan Weaver appeared to the world as a broken, blacklisted man, he was living a secret double life. In a sleek, hidden downtown office, far from the sympathetic eyes of Janet Hicks, he was known by another name, Mr. Atlas, the enigmatic and feared CEO of a ghost corporation. This was his true secret identity, a phantom in the market who had been quietly acquiring a controlling interest in Harrison Industries for years. Long before he even met Janet, the Atlas persona was born years ago from a deep-seated need for protection and power. After a previous business partner had betrayed him and stolen his first company, a young Alan vowed to never be vulnerable again. He created Atlas as an invisible shield, a corporate entity that could move with speed and anonymity, allowing him to build an empire without ever showing his face. His secret identity wasn't just a tool for revenge, it was his armor against a cruel world. This wasn't a hastily planned revenge, it was a masterfully orchestrated long game. Alan, the underestimated logistics clerk, was actually a self-made billionaire, a prodigy who had built an empire from the ground up under a cloak of absolute anonymity. He had targeted Harrison Industries from the start, not for personal reasons, but because its CEO was a ruthless predator he aimed to dethrone. Meeting Janet was a shocking plot twist he had never anticipated in his grand plan. The very logistical skills Mr. Harrison had mocked were the tools Alan was now using to dismantle his empire. He moved assets, acquired shell companies, and manipulated stock prices with the precision of a grandmaster playing chess. He was a secret rival hiding in plain sight, using the world's perception of him as a poor, humiliated nobody as the perfect camouflage. No one, least of all the arrogant tycoon, would ever suspect the man he was trying to crush was his greatest corporate threat. His days were a paradox. He would spend hours with Janet, accepting her secret help with a heavy heart, playing the part of the beaten man to protect his cover. Then, he would retreat to his secret headquarters and command an army of traitors and lawyers, preparing the final stages of the takeover. This immense emotional pressure was the price of his payback, a necessary deception in a high-stakes game of corporate warfare and a deeply personal love story. He was using the father's cruelty as fuel. Every insult, every slammed door, every moment of humiliation only sharpened his focus. This had started as business, but now it was deeply personal. He wasn't just aiming for a corporate victory, he was fighting for redemption, for justice, for a world where a man's worth wasn't measured by his bank account. This was his life-changing mission, a crusade hidden behind the facade of a broken man. The pieces were almost all in place. The final move was approaching, the moment the undercover CEO would finally reveal himself. He knew that the fallout would be catastrophic, a financial earthquake that would shatter the Harrison dynasty forever. What he didn't know was that his opponent was about to make a desperate, cruel move of his own, one that would threaten to destroy not just his plan for revenge, but his very soul. Mr. Harrison, feeling the invisible squeeze on his company and seeing his daughter slip further from his control, was becoming a desperate man. His attempts to break Alan had failed. In fact, they seemed to have strengthened Janet's resolve. Pushed into a corner, his ruthless instincts took over, and he decided to escalate the drama to an entirely new level. If he couldn't get Alan out of her life through pressure, he would do it through utter annihilation. He orchestrated his most diabolical plan yet. Using his vast resources, he hired a team of covert operatives to fabricate a mountain of evidence. They created false email trails, doctored financial records, and even staged digital communications to make it look like Alan Weaver was a corporate spy. The target of this fake espionage? None other than his own company, Harrison Industries. It was a shocking and malicious lie designed to paint Alan as the ultimate villain. The evidence was a masterpiece of deception, meticulously crafted to be airtight and undeniable. It showed Alan selling company secrets to a competitor that, in a stroke of cruel irony, was one of Alan's own shell corporations. The tycoon was unwittingly confirming his rival's existence while framing an innocent man. He had no idea he was playing directly into the hands of the secret rival he was trying to invent as Alan's handler. As he reviewed the finished file of fake evidence, Mr. Harrison felt a cold surge of satisfaction. There was no guilt, no flicker of paternal regret for what he was about to do to his daughter. He saw this not as a betrayal of her trust, but as a necessary surgical procedure to remove a cancer from their family. This clinical detachment was the true mark of his monstrosity, proving that his love for his daughter was conditional and secondary to his own ego. He planned the reveal with the flair of a showman. He wouldn't just show this proof to Janet, he would make her discover it, as if by accident, to maximize the emotional devastation and make the betrayal feel more authentic. He was setting a trap, not for Alan, but for his own daughter's heart. This was the point of no return in their family drama, a father willing to psychologically destroy his child to win a battle of egos. This act was the manifestation of his deepest corruption. It was no longer about protecting his daughter, it was about pure, unadulterated revenge against the man who had defied him. He was so convinced of his own superiority that he felt entitled to destroy anyone who challenged it. This elaborate frame-up was the desperate act of a crumbling king, a man so terrified of being underestimated that he would burn his own kingdom to the ground to catch one man. With the false evidence planted and the stage set, he waited. He knew this move would be a fatal blow to Alan and Janet's love story. He believed that even the strongest love couldn't survive the poison of such a profound betrayal. He was about to present Janet with a choice she could never have imagined, forcing her into a corner that would lead to a heartbreaking, life-changing decision that would alter everyone's destiny. The discovery happened as Mr. Harrison planned. He left the file on his desk, knowing Janet would see it. Her world shattered. The emails, the bank transfers, the sheer volume of meticulously fabricated data was overwhelming and sickeningly convincing. It painted a picture of Alan not as a noble victim, but as a manipulative, greedy traitor who had been playing her all along. The man she loved was a lie. The confrontation was the most emotional and heart-wrenching moment of their lives. Janet, clutching the false evidence with trembling hands, faced Alan with tears of pure betrayal streaming down her face. She screamed at him, she accused him, she presented the proof of his deception. Alan's denials were useless against the wall of irrefutable lies. For the first time, he was truly speechless, seeing the woman he loved look at him with utter hatred. As she accused him, Alan felt like he was splitting in two. One half of him, the man who loved her, wanted to scream the truth, to reveal his secret identity and burn the world down to prove his innocence. The other half, the cold strategist Mr. Atlas, knew that revealing his hand now would compromise the entire operation. This internal war was agonizing, forcing him to stand there and absorb her hatred to protect the very plan that was meant to secure their future. "How could you?" she sobbed, her voice breaking. "After everything I did for you, everything I sacrificed, was it all just a game to you? Was I just a way for you to get back at my father?" Each word was a dagger in his heart. He could see the love in her eyes being extinguished, replaced by a cold, devastating pain. He was being humiliated all over again, but this time, by the one person whose opinion mattered, and it was 1,000 times worse. And so she ended it. With a final, choked sob, Janet told him it was over. She couldn't be with a man who would betray her and her family so callously. She walked away, leaving Alan standing alone in his apartment, the silence now a deafening roar. This was the tycoon's ultimate victory, the triumphant culmination of his cruel campaign. He had finally broken their true love story, and Alan Weaver was left utterly defeated. This is the ultimate false defeat. Was her reaction justified? Tell us what you think below. This was his darkest hour. He had been so focused on his grand plan for revenge that he had failed to protect the one thing he was truly fighting for. The irony was devastating. He was being accused of corporate espionage against his rival's company, a company he was secretly about to own. But that truth was a secret identity he could not reveal, not yet. The world saw Alan Weaver as a failed corporate spy, a jilted lover, and a complete nobody. He had lost his job, his reputation, and now, the love of his life. He was completely and utterly alone. From the outside, the game was over, and he had lost spectacularly. The rich versus poor battle had a clear winner. But in the ashes of his personal defeat, the fire of his payback was about to be rekindled into an inferno. The days that followed were a gray, meaningless blur. Alan, the secret billionaire, the master strategist Mr. Atlas, was gone. All that remained was Alan Weaver, the heartbroken man. He would sit in his hidden high-tech office, surrounded by screens detailing the final stages of his corporate takeover, but he felt nothing. The numbers, the projections, the imminent victory, it all felt like ash in his mouth. The triumphant feeling he had imagined was completely absent. His quest for revenge, once a burning, righteous fire, now seemed like a hollow and childish pursuit. What was the point of ruining Mr. Harrison? What was the point of taking his company, his legacy, his entire empire, if it meant living in a world without Janet? He had set out to prove that love was more valuable than money, but in the process, he had lost love itself. The emotional cost of his secret identity was proving to be far too high. Late at night, he would pull out a worn photograph from his wallet, a picture of him and Janet at a summer fair, both laughing, their faces sticky with cotton candy. He would trace the outline of her smile with his finger, the memory a ghost of a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. This tangible piece of their love story was a source of both comfort and exquisite pain, a reminder of the paradise he had lost. He replayed their final, agonizing conversation over and over in his mind. The look of pure betrayal in her eyes was a wound that wouldn't close. He had let her believe the worst of him, a necessary sacrifice to protect his plan. But now, he wondered if the plan was even worth it. This life-changing loneliness was a prison far worse than any financial hardship he had ever endured. He was on the verge of winning everything, and yet he felt like he had nothing. He almost called it off. Several times his hand hovered over the phone, ready to abort the entire operation, to liquidate everything and just disappear. Maybe he could start over somewhere else, try to forget her. But then the image of Mr. Harrison's smug, triumphant face would flash in his mind. The memory of his initial humiliation and the cruel, calculated way he had destroyed Janet's faith in him would reignite a spark of his original purpose. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. He had to see this through, not just to punish the man who had wronged them, but to reveal the truth. He had to prove to Janet and to the world what her father was truly capable of. He had to show her that their love story wasn't the lie was the world her father had built around her. His pain and heartbreak were now being forged into a new, more powerful resolve. And so, with a heavy heart, he gave the final order. The endgame was initiated. The corporate takeover would proceed. His quest for payback was back on track, but its purpose had been transformed. He wasn't doing this for the thrill of victory, but for the slim, desperate hope that when the dust settled, the truth would be enough to bring back the only person who had ever seen the real Heimven, the version he had pretended to be. The stage was set for Mr. Harrison's ultimate moment of triumph. He stood at a podium in front of a massive banner for Harrison Industries, a sea of journalists and cameras before him. He was beaming, radiating the smug confidence of a king who had vanquished his greatest foe. He was there to announce a major financial victory, a successful defense against a hostile takeover attempt by an aggressive and, until now, anonymous rival corporation. He spoke with arrogance, detailing how his company had weathered the storm. "We have faced a shadowy, relentless adversary," he declared, his voice booming across the grand ballroom. "An entity known only as Atlas Holdings. But today, I am pleased to announce that Harrison Industries has prevailed. We have exposed their tactics and secured our future." In the audience, a heartbroken Janet Hicks watched, forced to attend by her father to witness his glory. For Janet, being there was torture. She had to put on a brave face, the supportive daughter, while her heart was a black hole of grief and confusion. She felt numb, a ghost floating through a celebration that felt like a funeral. Her father's victory felt utterly hollow, a prize won at the cost of her happiness and the destruction of a man she, despite everything, still felt a painful, lingering love for. This emotional conflict was tearing her apart inside. He was at the absolute peak of his power, savoring the moment. He had not only secured his company, but had also successfully removed Alan Weaver from his daughter's life. In his mind, all his problems were solved, all his enemies defeated. He was untouchable, a billionaire titan basking in the glow of his supposed victory. The karma he thought he deserved was finally being delivered in front of a global audience. The drama seemed to have reached its final triumphant conclusion for him. He was about to take a final question when a commotion started at the back of the room. A figure was walking calmly but purposefully down the center aisle, moving toward the stage. Security guards moved to intercept, but the man waved them off with an air of quiet, absolute authority that they instinctively obeyed. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd of reporters, cameras turning to capture the unexpected interruption. Mr. Harrison squinted, his smile faltering as he tried to recognize the impeccably dressed man approaching the stage. The suit was perfect, the confidence radiating from him was palpable, but there was something familiar about his face, a face he associated with poverty and weakness. It couldn't be, but it was. A shocking, impossible reality was dawning on him, a plot twist so audacious it defied all logic. The man stepped onto the stage, took the spare microphone from the podium, and stood beside the now pale and speechless tycoon. The room fell into a stunned silence. Janet gasped from the audience, her hands flying to her mouth as she stared at the man she thought she knew, the man she had cast out of her life. It was Alan Weaver, but it wasn't the Alan she knew. This was someone else entirely. "I apologize for the interruption," Alan Weaver said, his voice calm and amplified throughout the silent ballroom. "But I feel a clarification is in order." He looked directly at the sea of cameras, his gaze steady and powerful. "Mr. Harrison is mistaken. Harrison Industries has not prevailed." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. As of 90 minutes ago, Atlas Holdings completed its acquisition of a 51% controlling interest in this company. A collective gasp went through the room. The journalists erupted into a frenzy of frantic typing and hushed, excited chatter. Mr. Harrison stared at him, his face a mask of utter disbelief and horror. And as for the identity of the shadowy CEO of Atlas Holdings, Alan continued, turning to face the tycoon with a cold, piercing stare. "Well, you can stop looking. You're looking right at him." This was the ultimate reveal of his secret identity. The financial news tickers, visible on screens around the room, went haywire. HRI stock was shown as plummeting while news alerts flashed across the bottom. Mystery CEO of Atlas Holdings revealed as Alan Weaver, Harrison Industries. Hostile takeover complete. The digital confirmation of his words created a secondary shockwave through the room. This wasn't just a claim, it was a verified, market-shattering fact happening in real time. This was a truly shocking takeover. The room exploded. This was the plot twist of the century. The humiliated, worthless clerk, the disgraced corporate spy, was the secret rival billionaire all along. It was an unbelievable, life-changing revelation. Janet felt the floor drop out from beneath her. Her mind raced, trying to connect the dots, to understand the sheer scale of the deception and the reality she was now facing. The man she had accused and abandoned was one of the most powerful men in the world. Alan Weaver, the undercover CEO, was finally out in the open. He stood there not with arrogance, but with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a man whose long-laid plans had finally come to fruition. He was no longer the boy in the cheap suit being mocked at a dinner table. He was the master of this universe, the man who had just bought the table, the dinner, and the entire house it was in. The power dynamic had been completely and irrevocably reversed. This was the culmination of his grand plan for revenge. He had not just beaten Mr. Harrison, he had allowed him to declare victory on a global stage before spectacularly, publicly, and humiliatingly pulling the rug out from under him. He had paid him back, not just for the personal insult, but for his arrogance, his cruelty, and his hubris. The shock on the tycoon's face was the first part of his true payback. But this was about more than just corporate conquest. Alan turned his gaze from the broken billionaire to the audience, his eyes searching until they found hers. He saw Janet, her face pale with shock and dawning realization. The hardest part of his plan was yet to come, exposing the truth of the lie that had torn them apart, and seeing if there was anything left of their love story to salvage from the wreckage. "But this takeover is not the only reason I'm here today," Alan announced, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. He gestured to the large screen behind the podium where the Harrison Industries logo was proudly displayed. "I'm also here to set the record straight." With a click of a button from a remote in his hand, the logo was replaced by a new set of files. The heading was clear for everyone to see: the framing of Alan Weaver. He laid it all out with cold, brutal efficiency. He presented the original, unaltered server logs, the real financial records, and even audio recordings of Mr. Harrison hiring the very people who framed him. The evidence was irrefutable, a digital trail of corruption that showed exactly how the tycoon had fabricated the corporate espionage story to destroy him. He exposed the entire lie, piece by painful piece, for the world and for Janet to see. A memory flashed in Janet's mind, a fierce argument where she defended Alan against her father's early vague accusations. She remembered screaming, he would never do that. Now, the sickening realization washed over her that she had been right all along. She had championed his innocence against the very man who was creating the lie. Her earlier faith in him now served as a cruel testament to how deeply she had been betrayed by her own father. Each new piece of evidence was another blow to Janet's heart. She saw the truth in its horrifying clarity. Alan hadn't betrayed her. He had been the victim of an unbelievably cruel and manipulative plot orchestrated by her own father. The man she had screamed at, the man she had called a traitor, had been innocent all along. A wave of regret and shame so powerful it was physically nauseating washed over her. She had been a pawn in her father's sick game. Alan never looked at his defeated rival. His focus was entirely on the truth. He wasn't gloating, he was simply presenting the facts. Mr. Harrison didn't just try to ruin my life with his power, Alan said, his voice thick with emotion for the first time. He abused that power to manipulate his own daughter, to poison her heart against a man she loved, simply because he deemed him unworthy. The family drama was laid bare for the world to see. Mr. Harrison stood frozen, a statue of a man utterly and completely destroyed. He had lost his company, his reputation, and in that moment, his daughter. He watched as Janet, her face a mess of tears, finally understood the depths of his deception. The bond between them was shattered, likely forever. The karma he had so desperately tried to outrun had finally caught up to him on the biggest stage imaginable, a truly triumphant moment for the truth. The press conference had turned into a trial, and the verdict was in. Alan had not only achieved his revenge, he had achieved total vindication. He had cleared his name and exposed the true villain of their love story. He turned off the screen and looked once more at Janet, his expression unreadable. The air was thick with unspoken words, with regret, and with the faint, flickering hope of a possible redemption. With the cameras still rolling and the world watching, Alan Weaver did something no one expected. He walked away from the podium, ignoring the ruined man who was once a billionaire, and approached the edge of the stage, his eyes locked on Janet. The noise of the room seemed to fade away until it was just the two of them. His expression softened, the hard edge of the CEO replaced by the man she once knew. His quest for payback was complete, but something more important was at stake. None of this was about the money, Janet, he said, his voice now gentle, meant only for her. Ruining him. That was just a consequence. The real reason for all of this. He paused, taking a breath. It was a test. A crazy, elaborate, and probably insane test. He admitted that when he first met her, he couldn't believe someone like her could genuinely love someone like him, a simple clerk. He had to know if her love was real, or if she was just like her father. He confessed that his own past was littered with people who had only wanted him for his hidden wealth, which was why he created the poor clerk persona in the first place. It was a shield to find someone genuine. I had to know, he said, his voice vulnerable. I had to find one person in this world whose love was not for sale, who would love me when I had nothing. This secret identity wasn't just for business, it was a desperate search for true love. When your father tried to blacklist me and destroy me, Alan explained, you had every reason to walk away. You could have chosen the easy life, chosen his side. But you didn't. He recounted the moments she had secretly helped him, how she had fought with her father, how she had risked everything for him. You defied him for me. You proved your love wasn't tied to status or wealth. You proved you were fighting for us. That, he said, was the moment she passed his test. Janet listened, speechless, as the final shocking plot twist settled in her heart. The pain of her betrayal was still there, but it was now mixed with a profound understanding. The frame-up was her father's evil, but everything before it is secrecy. His playing the part of a poor manet was his way of protecting his heart and searching for a true, Love he probably never believed he'd find. Their entire love story had been an incredible high-stakes test of character. "But I failed," she whispered, tears of regret still falling. "When he showed me that evidence, I believed him. I left you." Alan shook his head. "You didn't fail," he insisted. "You were deceived by an expert liar. But your heart was always in the right place. You fought for me until you were presented with an impossible lie. Your love was always true, Janet. That's all I ever needed to know." It was a moment of pure emotional grace and redemption. He had orchestrated this grand, life-changing revenge, a scheme of immense complexity, all to answer one simple question that had haunted him his entire life. Could he be loved for who he truly was? And in the midst of all the drama, Janet, the billionaire's daughter, had given him the answer. She had proven herself loyal, not to the secret CEO, but to the humble man she thought he was. Alan extended his hand down from the stage. "I should have told you everything from the start," he said, his voice filled with a sincerity that cut through the spectacle. "And I am sorry for the pain my secret has caused you. But a world where I have all of this," he gestured to the chaos of his new empire, "and not you, is not a world I want to live in. My revenge is empty. This victory is meaningless without you by my side." He looked at her, his heart in his eyes, offering a full and public forgiveness. He was giving her a way out of her regret, a path back to him. It was the ultimate grand gesture, a declaration that she was, and always had been, his true prize. His empire was just a tool, she was the purpose. This was the triumphant climax of their unbelievable love story, a testament that true love could survive even the most incredible drama. Janet, looking at the man she loved, saw not the powerful billionaire or the undercover CEO, but the kind soul who had shared an umbrella with her in the rain. Wiping away her tears, she walked forward and took his outstretched hand. He pulled her gently up onto the stage with him, and they stood together, facing the world not as a rich versus poor cliché, but as two equals who had fought their way back to each other. "All I ever wanted was a life with you, Alan Weaver," she said softly, for only him to hear. "The kind, decent man I fell in love with." He smiled. He's still here. He was just working on the biggest project of his life. In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of her father's legacy and the dawn of their new one, they found their redemption, a new beginning built on an unbreakable foundation of trust and shared struggle. He turned to the audience one last time, with Janet's hand held firmly in his. "Wealth is not a measure of a man's worth," he stated, echoing the sentiment that started their whole ordeal. "Love is." It was a life-changing lesson delivered on a global stage, a powerful message of hope and integrity. This wasn't just a corporate takeover, it was a moral one, a final act of karma that set the universe right again. Like this video if you believe in the power of true love. As they stood together, a new power couple forged in fire and deception, they represented a triumphant new beginning. Their journey was a testament that even after the most emotional drama, payback, and shocking revelations, the one thing that truly endures is a connection that is priceless. They had faced the ultimate test and emerged not just intact, but stronger than ever before. Hand in hand, they walked off the stage, leaving the flashing cameras and the wreckage of the old guard behind them. Their future was unwritten, but for the first time, it was completely theirs to write. The undercover CEO and the billionaire's daughter were finally just Alan and Janet, and their real love story, free from secrets and revenge, was just beginning. It was a truly life-changing and triumphant moment of pure redemption. In the end, this was more than just a story about revenge. It was a powerful reminder that the wealthiest people are not those who have the most, but those who are willing to lose it all for what truly matters. Alan's journey shows us that the ultimate payback isn't ruining your enemy, but building a life so full of love and truth that their world of hate can't even touch it. If you also believe that a person's true worth is measured by their character, not their bank account, then you've found your community. This channel is a place for us. Subscribe and join the family of those who know that integrity is a superpower. Now for the trifecta of engagement. Like this video as a signal to the world that true love is priceless. For our question today, comment below with the moment that hit you the hardest. Was it the humiliation at the dinner, or the triumphant reveal on stage? And finally, share this video with one person who needs to be reminded that karma always finds its way. And don't let the journey end here. While you wait for what's next, know that our channel is a treasure chest of emotional stories just like this one. Explore our older videos and discover other unforgettable journeys you might have missed. And to make sure you never miss out on the incredible stories we have yet to tell, activate that notification bell. You won't want to be left out of the next emotional roller coaster.